Welcome to Talking to Myself. I'm Carol L. Paur, author of the middle grade fantasy Is a Snore Snores and the upcoming young adult novel Early Summer. Do you remember when I told you Orange Blossom Publishing was working on my book cover? Part of that is getting the different taglines or pitches on the cover to get people interested in reading the book. That's what we've been doing. Publishing a book is exciting but challenging for publishers. I am grateful for Orange Blossom Publishing for taking on Early Summer and Black Rose Writing for publishing Is a Snore Snores. Last month, I said March was a busy birthday month for family and friends. I missed one of them already. Happy belated birthday, Denise. One special birthday will be my mother's. She will turn 90 on March 25th. She has agreed to be my special guest for this month's show. Having Mom say yes is like winning the lottery and finding a pot of gold on the same day while not having the IRS take it all away. Mom is a private person. She is so private and secret, we like to joke that she works for the CIA. Maybe she does, and we don't know about it. I can't really ask her if she does, because she won't be able to tell me. Mom said this was her very first interview, ever. She's never been in the pages of the New York Times. She's never been on Dateline or on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. I feel pretty honored. Or maybe she's retired from the CIA. Without further ado, here's my interview with my mother. You lived in during some momentous events in history. Let's talk about some of them and see how they affected your life. You were born March 25th, 1932, but there were things that were going on in that month. In fact, March 1st, the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped. Apparently, you didn't know anything about that because you were born, but did they ever talk about that as you were growing up, ever?
Yeah, they did.
What did they say? Or what did you
Well, at first they didn't know who it was that stole the baby, and they just kept looking. I don't remember a lot about it, but I know for years they talked about it.
Were your
and
parents...
I really didn't pay that much attention.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, and I was curious about that because I thought, would you become, like as a parent, were your parents more protective of you, or?
My parents were very protective of me because my brother had died. He was 4 and I was 5. My sister died. She was 6 months old, and so I wanted a bike, and we lived on Highway 38, which is the main thoroughfare. And I asked for a bike, and they would not get me a bike. They lost 2 children. They weren't going to lose a third one. I think that's what they thought. They never told me that.
Right.
But that's, thinking back now, I think that's what it was.
So you grew up during the Great Depression. You were young, very young. What was that like?
Well, we didn't have a lot. I can remember that we had one sheet on our bed. We didn't have a top sheet. We had a pillowcase. That was about it. We had blankets, but not a lot, not extras. We moved into our house in 1936. My dad was a general contractor for it, even though he was just a farm boy. And he was out of a job at that time, so he just had a lot of time when he used the plow horses from the farm and had a great big scoop shovel. I can remember going over there at our new home lot, which was on the farm, and he dug the basement with the horses. And then I don't remember much about moving in or anything like that, but I was only 4 then, and that was 1936. And my brother Raymond was 3, and I can remember when we had the new baby that we had a wicker clothes basket, and my mother put a pillow in the clothes basket with a pillowcase on it, and that was the baby's bed.
You had told us a story about Grandpa being interviewed.
Oh, my grandpa found, my dad found out, he was out of work, and so he found out that if you were interviewed by they called it the Man on the Street program on radio, if you were interviewed by him, you would get $10. Well, $10 was a lots of money. So he went down, I remember he got all dressed up. He put a suit on, you know, it was his best. He was interviewed. And of course, we're listening on the radio. And he came home and he had 2 bags of groceries. 2 bags. Yeah.
Did he go out every day for this? And
No,
then
it was
finally,
just one.
It was just once.
Just
alone.
once, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was that a radio station?
It was a radio station, WRGN at the time, and I think they're still on. And then one at the same, probably in the same year or maybe the next year, but it was still the Depression, we didn't have anything. And so my Aunt Grace, my mother's sister, I can remember her bringing a little tree. She was dragging this tree in, and she also had a box full of things for us for Christmas. And I got a doll, I remember that. And my brother had a little gas station, and it had an elevator. You know, you move this thing up and down, and that. Well, I would play with the elevator, and he'd play with the doll.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. World War II, 1941, Japan strikes Pearl Harbor. What was going on? You were, let's see, 1941, you would have been...
I was 9.
9 years old.
I can remember that night. We always watched or listened to the Walter Winchell. He was on Sunday night, and we were around the radio listening. And evidently we had heard before that, maybe at church or that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. So we're there listening to Walter Winchell. And it was just a very, very scary, because they, you know, Hawaii, I mean, that was part of the United States. So we were afraid that they were not only going to bomb Pearl Harbor, they're going to come over and bomb us too. And then the Japanese people that lived in California or any place, they were really discriminated against terribly, because they thought, or the government or whoever it was, thought, you know, that they were not to be trusted. So yeah, it was not a good time. And then we had rationing. We had stamps for, I can remember, butter and meat and gas. You couldn't get gas unless you had stamps. And then you could only get so much. You know, we always had nylon stockings. We couldn't buy nylon stockings either. They made that, used those for parachutes. So, and everybody tightened their belt and didn't expect, it was so wonderful that everybody was so patriotic that they would be doing anything for the war effort. They called it the war effort. They would sell defense bonds. Even the little kids could buy defense bonds. A lot of the women went to work in the factories, Rosie the Riveter, and it was from that time on, I think, women got used to being out of the house and working, that they didn't want to go back. They wanted that paycheck and, you know, and buy things that they could afford.
So, was Grandpa working during the war?
He got a job at Western Printing. They were making these maps for the aircraft, I think it was, Army Air Corps. And it was hush-hush. You never said what you were working on. And they had a saying that said, loose lips sink ships. So you just didn't, when the people that were working in they called them defense plants.
Okay.
You couldn't say what you were working on in certain areas.
Wow.
But Grandpa worked at he got a job at Western Printing, and then he worked there for the rest of it, until he could retire, which was a good job.
Okay, so we were going to talk about churches, what they were doing.
All churches were filled. Just like after 9/11, they were filled. And we had devotions, Tuesday night devotions, Sunday Mass. During Lent, it was the Stations of the Cross.
1945, Germany surrendered. You were 13, and Japan surrendered in September of that year. Do you remember anything of those days at that time?
Well, I remember that when Japan surrendered, there was a big celebration in New York City. And see, at that time, we didn't really have colored pictures, TV or anything. We had the radio. But on the newspapers, there was a great big picture of this sailor kissing this nurse.
Okay.
We were very happy. And then we had masses in Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah, for peace.
Okay, yeah. So in 1950 was the start of the Korean War. Dad, your husband James, he served, though he was not in the front lines. Did you know anyone who served on the front lines in the Korean War?
Yes, my brother-in-law and another man. And my brother-in-law never would talk about it. It was Pork Chop Hill, never talk about it. But one night Charlie and Barbara were in the same card club that we were in. There were 6 of us. And we were at this couple's house and playing cards. And then all out of the blue, this one guy said, he looked up into space and he said, "They're gonna die. They're gonna die. They're like pigs being led to slaughter. Oh, God help them." And from that time on, he just lost it. Because he was always off into this distant area where he couldn't talk to he never talked to anybody about it before, but that night, for some reason, something must have brought back his memory of that. And then my brother-in-law, Charlie, just sat there. He didn't say anything.
Did you ever pay attention to the first man on the moon, or?
Well, was Neil Armstrong and we were thrilled that, they made it up there. And then when they came back, that was really exciting. We watched it on TV.
Okay, November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh, that was terrible. I can still remember, it's like yesterday, I was in my bedroom on my knees waxing my bedroom floor. And I had the radio on. And the radio was, you could push it in any little place. It was small. And all of a sudden it said, our President John Kennedy have been assassinated. No, he's been shot. Because they didn't know he was dead.
Many things happened to Mom and her family after JFK's assassination. One child passed away. More children were born. Mom went on to nursing school and ended up working in an emergency room for years. She traveled with Dad and traveled to Rome with her sister. Her children married and had families of their own. Some family and friends passed from this life to the next. All this was happening as the world around her changed. Computers, school shootings, violence and riots, advances in science and medicine. A tiny virus caused gigantic problems starting in 2019. And as its effects began to shrink, 2022 brought us Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Please listen as we wrap up our conversation. A lot of times things happen in history or, politically that, we are so busy living our lives, we don't really pay attention to it.
As an American, I've taken so much for granted. I love my country dearly, and I think anybody who does not love America should go to a different country and live there for a year and find out how much they've got to be thankful for here. And the situation we are in right now, unless we bring God back into our life, it's not going to change. It's going to get worse.
Do you have any regrets?
Well, there are things that I have said in my lifetime that I wished I hadn't. I'm sure I must have hurt people by what I've said. I'm sorry for that. No, I've been very blessed. I've really been blessed. Somebody's been watching out for me.
Sure. So how about advice? Any advice you want to give to anyone listening?
Well, I really just love everybody that that's your family, and take care of as many as you can, and always give, because you get so much more from giving. You really do. When you're a kid, you want Christmas presents, but when you get older, it's more fun to give.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's about it.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Barbara, or Mom.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And you have a great birthday. But
Thank
we'll
you.
see you on your birthday. That wraps it up. The one and only interview with my mother. Mom was in the newspaper this week, so I feel free to tell you she's the mother of Patrick, Mary Jane, Shelley, Nancy, Ann, and Judy, and the grandmother to 23 kiddos. She has 7 great-grandchildren, and there are 3 more on the way. Sitting at her kitchen table, I thought of some things to share with you. First, if you're older and have grandchildren, tell them your story. If they're not willing or ready to listen, write it down. It doesn't have to be a novel, just some of your perceptions of your life and the world around you. If you're younger, start writing things down now. Someday they'll be interesting to someone. It all ties in with the advice Mom gave. It's more fun to give. Speaking of giving, I'd like to say happy birthday to my daughter Elizabeth, my nephew Michael, my sister Mary Jane, sister-in-laws Patty and Cindy, and my friends Gretchen, Angela D., and Ted. Did I miss anyone? On a more solemn note, please keep praying for Ukraine and for peace. Next month is Easter. I am hoping to have a special guest. No, not the Easter Bunny, unless he decides to spring a surprise visit upon me. This special guest is so secret, you'll have to wait until next month to find out. In the meantime, check out this month's blog to find ways to peace, and please share everywhere. Thank you for listening. Cheers!